Captain Ji-won Kim stood on her bridge and made a decision that would either save everyone or kill them all. The Horizon's promise was still pressed against the fortress hull, using it as a shield against the main weapons. But her Marines were trapped inside with 80 hostages running out of ammunition and time. "Doyen," she said quietly, "I need a way into that fortress. A way that doesn't involve getting vaporized by those main weapons." Her tactical officer studied his displays. "There's no good option, Captain. The moment we pull away from the hull, we're exposed. Then we don't pull away. Taewon, can you breach the hull beneath us? Create an entry point directly into the fortress?" The chief engineer was quiet for a moment. "I can, but Captain, that means we're abandoning the ship. We breach the hull, we go inside, there's no one left to fly the Horizon." "I know." Ji-won looked around her bridge. Her crew, her people, all watching her with trust that hurt to see. "We're not leaving them in there. If the only way to get them out is to go in ourselves, then that's what we do." Ambassador Hyun stood from his observation station. "Captain, I must object. You're talking about abandoning a council diplomatic vessel to mount what amounts to a ground assault. This goes beyond any authority you have." "You're probably right." Ji-won met his eyes. "Log your objection, Ambassador." "But I'm still doing it." Hyun studied her face, then slowly nodded. "Then I'm coming with you. Someone needs to coordinate with the hostages, help keep them calm. That's my job. Ambassador, you're not trained for combat. Neither are those 80 people in there. If they can survive, so can I." Ji-won wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. "Fine. Taewon, begin the breach. Everyone else, combat gear. We're going in." Lieutenant Commander Jun took the command chair as the bridge crew dispersed. "Captain, what do I do with the ship?" "Set the AI to maintain position. If we're not back in 3 hours, program it to self-destruct. I won't let this technology fall into pirate hands." "Understood. Good hunting, Captain." 20 minutes later, Ji-won stood at the breach point with 15 crew members, all wearing combat armor that looked strange on scientists and engineers. Taewon had cut through the fortress hull, creating an opening that led into what their sensors said was a maintenance corridor. "Remember," Ji-won addressed her makeshift assault team, "we're not here to fight. We're here to rescue. We move fast, we stay together, and we get our people out. Yoonji will guide us through the safest route." "Define safest," someone muttered. Ji-won smiled grimly. "The route where we only fight half the fortress instead of all of it." They dropped through the breach into the corridor below. The artificial gravity caught them, and Ji-won's boots hit the deck with a solid thud. The corridor was dark, lit only by emergency lights that painted everything red. "Yoonji, I need directions," Ji-won said into her comm. "Go left, 50 meters, then take the second right. I'm mapping a route that avoids main troop concentrations. But Captain, they know you're inside now. Alarms are going off everywhere. Let them know. Come on, people, move." They ran through the fortress corridors. It was surreal, this alien environment with its 2 wide passages and strange angles. They passed doors and compartments, glimpsed Velrathi rushing to battle stations, heard the sounds of fighting from other sections. "Captain," Aaron called from behind her. "Movement ahead." "Lots of it." A squad of Velrathi soldiers rounded the corner, weapons raised. For a heartbeat, both groups stared at each other in surprise. Then training took over. Ji-won's team scattered, taking cover, returning fire. It wasn't elegant. Half of them were scientists who barely knew which end of a weapon to point. But they were angry, they were desperate, and they were human. That counted for something. The firefight lasted 30 seconds. The Velrathi fell back, more surprised than hurt. They hadn't expected resistance from what looked like a rescue party. "Keep moving," Ji-won ordered. "We can't get pinned down." They pressed forward. Dr. Mirai was behind Ji-won, breathing hard, her weapon held awkwardly but ready. "I'm a doctor," she panted. "I took an oath to do no harm." "You're also protecting patients," Ji-won replied. "That's not harming. That's healing with different tools. 2 more corridors. 1 more firefight, this one longer." Taewon took a hit to his shoulder but kept moving. Kunyo carried him when he couldn't keep up. "We're close," Yoonji reported. "The cargo bay is just ahead." "But Captain, there's a problem. The Velrathi are massing for an assault on Soman's position. A big one. 200 soldiers. How long do we have?" "Minutes. Maybe less," Ji-won pushed harder. They burst into the corridor outside the cargo bay just as the Velrathi began their assault. She could see them lined up, preparing to breach the doors where her Marines and the hostages waited. "Open fire," she ordered. They hit the Velrathi from behind. It was chaos. The pirates had been focused on the cargo bay, expecting all the resistance to come from there. They hadn't anticipated a second human force attacking from their rear. The tactical advantage lasted only seconds, but seconds were enough. The Velrathi formation broke, soldiers turning to face this new threat, splitting their attention. That's when the cargo bay doors opened and Soman's Marines came out fighting. The Velrathi found themselves caught between two human forces, both smaller, both outnumbered, but both absolutely unwilling to yield. The pirates broke and ran. "Captain," Somin's voice was hoarse with exhaustion. "Permission to say that was the most reckless thing I've ever seen you do." "Permission granted. Get those hostages ready to move." Inside the cargo bay, the 80 rescued beings stared at Jiwan with expressions she couldn't quite read. Fear, hope, disbelief. One of them, a tall Threnic female with silver feathers, stepped forward. "You came for us," she said in accented common. "Your fleet left. Everyone said you would leave too. But you came. We're human," Jiwan replied simply. "We don't leave people behind." The Threnic touched her forehead in what Jiwan recognized as a gesture of deep respect among her species. "My name is Lyra. I am an ambassador of the Council. When we are rescued, I will tell them what you have done here." "If we're rescued," Doyun corrected. "We still need to get out of this fortress." As if summoned by his words, the fortress shuddered. An explosion somewhere deep in its structure. The lights flickered. "What was that?" Ambassador Hyun asked. "That," Yunji said over the comm, "was their main reactor going into emergency shutdown. I may have accidentally damaged some critical systems while I was hacking around." "Accidentally?" Jiwan asked. "Very accidentally. On purpose. We have approximately 30 minutes before this whole place starts falling apart." Jiwan looked at her ragtag force. 35 humans now, counting everyone. 80 hostages, most of them injured or weak. And 30 minutes to escape a dying fortress while surrounded by angry pirates. "All right," she said. "New plan. We don't sneak out. We don't fight our way out, we run. Everyone who can carry someone, grab someone. Everyone who can't, stay in the middle. We move as one group as fast as our slowest member can go, Captain," Private Seok said. He looked pale, swaying slightly on his feet. "I can keep up. I promise." Medic Hana took one look at him and shook her head. "No, you can't. You've lost too much blood." She looked at Jiwan. "Captain, he needs immediate treatment or he won't make it." Jiwan felt something cold in her chest. "Not again. Not after coming this far." "Then we carry him," she said. "Minho, you and Junho take him. Hana, you stay with them. Everyone else, defensive formation around the hostages. We move in 5 seconds." They ran through the dying fortress. Behind them, explosions rippled through compartments as failing systems cascaded. Ahead, Velrathi scattered, more concerned with escaping themselves than stopping the humans. The route Yunji had mapped took them through a docking bay. Jiwan had hoped to find a ship there, something to steal for the escape. What she found instead was worse. The bay was empty except for one thing: the Velrathi commander and his personal guard also trying to escape. For a moment, everyone froze. The commander looked at the humans, at the rescued hostages, at his own blocked path to freedom. His face twisted with rage. "You've destroyed everything," he snarled. "My fortress, my operation, my reputation." "You destroyed yourself," Jiwan replied. "The moment you thought humans were just another prey species." The commander raised his weapon. His guards followed suit. Jiwan's team did the same. It was a standoff that could only end in bloodshed. Then Ambassador Lyra stepped forward. She positioned herself between the two groups, her feathers spread in a gesture that Jiwan knew meant protection among her people. "Enough," Lyra said firmly. "Commander, look around you. Your fortress is dying. Your crew is fleeing. You have lost. Don't make it worse by adding murder to your crimes." "Murder?" The commander laughed bitterly. "They're the predators. They're the killers. Look at them." "I am looking," Lyra replied. "I see beings who came into danger to save people they'd never met. I see soldiers who protected us when your guards used us as shields. I see humans who prove that predators can choose to be protectors." The commander stared at her, at Jiwan, at the humans who had ruined his perfect trap. "Go," he finally said, lowering his weapon. "Get out before I change my mind." They didn't wait for a second invitation. The group moved past the Velrathi, keeping weapons ready but not firing. Jiwan was the last to pass the commander. "Why?" she asked. "Why let us go?" Tell them humanity is showing the galaxy what's possible when you refuse to give up. She paused. Tell them to watch what happens when you threaten a H deep inside the fortress. Corporal Soman Kang pressed her back against the wall and listened to the sounds of chaos echoing through the corridors. Her team had secured the medical bay, but now they were trapped. The Velrathi knew exactly where they were and reinforcements were coming. Defensive positions, she ordered. Her Marines moved without hesitation, creating overlapping fields of fire at every entrance. Hana, how are those critical patients? Medic Hana Song looked up from the alien she was treating. The creature was a three-nick, one of the Council's bird-like species with a hole in its torso that would have killed most beings. Stabilized, Hana replied. But I can't move them yet. Give me 10 more minutes. You got 5, Samin said. She could hear footsteps now, dozens of them, coming from multiple directions. The Velrathi weren't stupid. They would attack from all sides at once, overwhelming through numbers. Private Seok Yang crouched beside her. He was the youngest member of her squad, barely 22, with a face that made him look even younger. But his hands were steady on his weapon. Corporal, he said quietly, there's a lot of them coming. I know, we're going to be okay, right? Samin looked at him. She could lie. She could give him false hope. But humans didn't lie to their pack, not about things like this. We're going to do our job, she said. We're going to protect these people. That's all that matters, Seok nodded, accepting it. That was the thing about humans. Once they committed to something, once they decided someone was worth protecting, death became just another obstacle to work around. The first wave hit them from the north corridor. Velrathi soldiers, heavily armed, advancing in formation. Sergeant Minho Bayek triggered the explosive charge they had set up, collapsing the corridor entrance. The explosion bought them 30 seconds. South corridor, Private Seok called out. Contact! This time there was no stopping them. The Velrathi came through in a rush, firing as they advanced. Samin's team returned fire, each shot placed with deadly accuracy. But there were too many. Falling back to secondary position, Soman ordered. Her Marines moved in sequence, covering each other, never leaving anyone exposed. It was a dance they had practiced 1,000 times, muscle memory taking over when thought was too slow. On the Horizon's Promise Bridge, Jiwan watched her Marines' vital signs flash across her display. They were taking fire. They were pinned down, and she was stuck outside, unable to help. Captain, Lieutenant Commander June Park said from the second officer station, we have to extract them. Can't. The moment we move away from the hull, those main weapons will fire. We'll be dead before we can dock, so what do we do? Jiwan studied the tactical display, looking for options, finding none. The Velrathi had sealed off the medical base section. Even if she could get close enough to dock, her Marines and the hostages were too deep inside the fortress. Then she noticed something. A small detail in the sensor readings that most people would have missed. Taewon, she said slowly. That weapons platform we destroyed earlier. It's still partially functional, isn't it? Yes, Captain. Life support and some computers are still online, but it's dead in space. Can you access its systems? There was a pause. Maybe. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that platform has communication links to the Fortress Command Center. And if we can access those links, Dr. Yoonji might be able to do something interesting with their internal systems. Dr. Yoonji Han, their tactical AI specialist, looked up from her station. You want me to hack a Velrathi fortress? I want you to give us an advantage, anything. Lights, doors, environmental controls. Something that makes them think twice about pressing that attack. Yoonji's fingers flew across her console. I'll need access to their network first, and they're going to notice an intrusion immediately. They're already trying to kill us. Let them notice. Taewon established the link to the damaged platform. Yoonji dove into the system like a predator into water, smooth and focused. Lines of code cascaded across her screen. I'm in, she said after a moment. Their security is good but not great. They're military, not corporate. Military systems always have backdoors for emergency situations. She paused. And I found one. What can you do? Gravity controls in multiple sections. Atmospheric processing. Internal communication systems. I can make their life very uncomfortable. Do it. Focus on the sections near the medical bay. Give Soman and her team breathing room. Inside the fortress, Soman was running out of options. Her team had fallen back twice already. They were down to their last defensive position, backs literally against the wall of the medical bay. The hostages were behind them, terrified, some crying, some praying in languages she didn't understand. Corporal, Minho called out. I'm out of ammunition for the primary weapon. Switching to sidearm, that was bad. That meant the end was close. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness filled the corridor. The Velrathi fired blind, energy bolts lighting up the space like lightning. But then those lights started flickering too, on and off, creating a strobe effect that was disorienting and nauseating. What's happening? Siok asked. Captain's doing, Soman guessed. She's messing with their systems. Use it. Night vision now. Her Marines activated their helmet displays. The world turned green, and suddenly they could see everything while the Velrathi stumbled around confused. The advantage lasted only minutes before the pirates adapted, but minutes were enough. Salmon's team cut down the advancing forces with brutal efficiency. Without the element of numbers, the Velrathi couldn't overwhelm them. And once the pirates realized they were now the ones being hunted in the darkness, they broke. They're retreating, Minho said, surprise in his voice. They're regrouping, Soman corrected. They'll be back. Hana, status on those patients. Good enough to move. I've got them stabilized. Then we move. Now. We can't hold this position forever. But where could they go? They were deep in enemy territory, surrounded by hostiles, with 80 civilians who couldn't fight and could barely walk. As if reading her thoughts, Dr. Miri's voice came through her helmet. Soman, I've been studying the fortress layout. There's a cargo bay 2 sections north of your position. It's mostly automated, minimal guard presence. If you can reach it, you can seal it off and create a more defensible position. How do we get 80 hostages through 2 sections without being seen? You don't. You do it anyway and dare them to stop you. Soman almost laughed. That was the human way, wasn't it? When stealth fails, when tactics run out, when logic says it's impossible, you just do it anyway with enough confidence that the universe blinks first. You heard the doctor? She told her Marines. We're moving. Combat formation. Hostages in the center. Anyone shoots at us, we shoot back harder. Sok, take point. Minho, rear guard. Everyone else, protect these people like they're family. They are family, Seok said quietly. Anyone we protect is family. That's what it means to be human. They moved out into the corridors. The hostages stumbled along, weak from captivity but driven by hope. The Marines surrounded them, weapons ready, scanning every shadow. When Velrathi guards appeared, Soman's team didn't hesitate. They engaged immediately, overwhelming the pirates with aggressive fire. The fortress shook. Somewhere the battle outside was continuing. G1 was still out there, still fighting, still refusing to abandon them. They reached the first corridor junction. More guards ahead. Too many to fight through. Yunji, Soman called through the comm. Any help you can give us? The response was immediate. The section between Soman's group and the guards suddenly vented atmosphere. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, separating them. The guards on the other side pounded on the transparent doors but couldn't get through. Path is clear, Yunji's voice said. But you've got maybe 60 seconds before they override it. The group ran. 80 hostages and 12 Marines moving as fast as the weakest among them could manage. Some of the Marines picked up children, others supported injured adults. Seok was carrying a small alien child under one arm, while firing his weapon with the other hand. They burst into the cargo bay, just as the bulkheads behind them reopened. Minho was the last through, and he was limping. Seal it, Soman ordered. The cargo bay doors locked. Soman quickly assessed their position. It was better than the medical bay, more open space, fewer entrance points, but they were still trapped. Minho, let me see that leg, Hana said, moving toward him. I'm fine. You're bleeding through your armor. Sit down. While Hana worked, Soman checked her remaining ammunition. 3 magazines. That was all. The rest of her team wasn't much better off. If the Velrathi made a concentrated push, they couldn't hold. Corporal Kang. Captain G1's voice cut through her thoughts. Status report. We're in the cargo bay. 80 hostages secured. But Captain, we're low on ammunition and medical supplies. If they hit us hard, I don't know if we can hold. There was a pause. When Jiwan spoke again, her voice carried an edge Soman had never heard before. You don't have to hold forever, Corporal. Just hold until I get there. Captain, you're outside the fortress, not for long. I'm coming to get you. All of you. That's a promise. Soman looked at her Marines, at the frightened hostages, at young Seok who was checking his weaponry. The Horizon's promise dove into the asteroid field like a falcon dropping from the sky. Junho's hands flew across his controls, threading the ship through gaps that made the bridge crew hold their breath. A massive rock tumbled past their port side, close enough that Ji-won could have reached out and touched it if not for the hull between them. "Weapons platform Alpha targeting us," Doyen called out. "Firing solution in 3 seconds. Junho, evasive pattern Delta," Ji-won ordered. The ship rolled hard to starboard just as energy beams sliced through the space they had occupied. The shot struck an asteroid instead, vaporizing tons of rock into glowing debris. "They're not used to targets that move like this," Doyun said with grim satisfaction. "Their targeting systems are too slow." "Good, use that. Taewon, can you get me weapons range on Platform Alpha?" 30 seconds, Captain. "But we'll be exposed." "Do it." Ji-won watched the tactical display as her ship wove through the debris field. The Velrothi had positioned their platforms assuming any attack would come from the front, slow and methodical. They had never imagined something coming from below, from above, from angles that made no strategic sense, because Council ships didn't think like that. Council ships were logical, predictable, safe. Human ships were none of those things. "Range," Taewon announced. "Fire." The Horizon's promise unleashed a concentrated barrage on weapons platform Alpha. Unlike Council weapons designed for long sieges and careful application of force, human weapons were built for one purpose: overwhelming the target before it could respond. The platform's shields collapsed under the assault. Secondary explosions rippled across its surface. "Platform Alpha destroyed," Doyen confirmed. "They're repositioning the others." "Wait, I'm reading movement from the fortress. Launch bay's opening." "Fighter craft?" Ji-won asked. "Looks like it. 40 No 50 small craft incoming." "Perfect." Ji-won had hoped they would do exactly that. Large weapons platforms were dangerous but predictable. Fighter craft required different thinking, different tactics, the kind of three-dimensional combat that humans had been practicing since the first atmospheric dogfights on Earth. "Junho, take us into the densest part of the asteroid field. Make them follow us into the rocks." "That's crazy, Captain. One wrong move and we're paced. So don't make a wrong move." The human ship plunged deeper into the debris field. Behind them, the Velrothi fighters followed, their formation tight and coordinated. Military precision. "Very impressive. Very predictable, Somin," Ji-won called to her Marine commander. "Are your people ready?" "Ready for what, Captain?" "We're still outside the fortress, not for long. Taewon, prepare the boarding torpedo." "Doyun, I need you to create an opening in their hull, right here." She highlighted a section of the fortress on the tactical display. "That's their medical bay according to our scans. If they're keeping hostages in decent condition, some will be there." "Captain, the fighters are gaining," Aaron warned. "Good. Junho, on my mark, full stop and rotate 180 degrees. Full stop. They'll be right on top of us, that's the idea. Mark." Junho executed the maneuver flawlessly. The Horizon's promise killed its forward momentum and spun to face the pursuing fighters. For a moment, the Velrothi pilots must have thought they had won, that their prey had finally been cornered. Then the human ship opened fire. At point-blank range, there was no dodging. Doyen's targeting was perfect. His fingers dancing across his console, selecting and destroying targets faster than they could scatter. 12 fighters died in the first volley. The rest broke formation, suddenly realizing they were no longer the hunters. "They're retreating," Aaron said, surprise in her voice. "They're learning," Ji-won corrected. "Junho, take us back toward the fortress." "Doyun, prepare that breach charge. We're going in." On the Council flagship, Karenth watched the tactical display with a sense of unreality. The human ship had just destroyed a weapons platform and crippled an entire fighter squadron. By itself in less than 10 minutes, replay the combat footage, he ordered. Frame by frame. His tactical officer complied. Karenth watched the human vessel move, really watched it for the first time. The way it anticipated attacks before they came. The way it positioned itself to minimize exposure, while maximizing offensive capability. The split-second timing that turned near misses into direct hits. "Their reaction time," he said slowly. "It's faster than our sensors can track." "Biologically impossible," his officer replied. "No species can process information that quickly. Apparently humans can. What else are we seeing?" "They're dividing their attention between multiple threats simultaneously. They're not following standard tactical doctrine at all. They're improvising every move based on enemy response." The officer paused. "Commander, this isn't how prey species fight." "No," Karenth agreed. "It's not." Back on the Horizon's Promise, Jiwon watched the fortress grow larger in the viewport. Weapon fire still lanced out at them, but Junho dodged with an ease that seemed almost casual. Every near miss was calculated, every roll and dive serving a purpose. Approaching target zone, Doyon reported. Shields at 60%. We can take a few more hits and don't plan on it. Summon Marines to the boarding torpedo. You'll have 30 seconds from breach to entry. After that, they'll seal the section. Understood, Captain. What are we up against inside? Unknown. But you'll be outnumbered. Use that human advantage. Summon's laugh came through the intercom. Copy that. We'll be the scariest thing in there. Jiwon had no doubt. She had seen Summon's Marines train. While Council species practiced formation fighting and defensive tactics, humans practiced something else entirely. Close quarters combat, room clearing, the brutal, efficient violence that came from millions of years of hunting in packs. Breach charge ready, Doyon announced. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The charge hit the fortress hull with precision, melting through armor and creating a wound in the station's skin. Atmosphere vented for a moment before emergency seals engaged. Torpedo away, Doyon said. The boarding torpedo was a human invention that had horrified Council military planners when they first saw it. A armored shell that carried a dozen Marines at high speed directly into enemy vessels. No docking requests. No negotiation. Just direct insertion into hostile territory. It was, the Council had declared, barbaric. It was also extremely effective. Torpedo has penetrated, Aaron reported. Marines are inside. Inside the fortress, Soman and her team moved through the breach point with practiced efficiency. The medical bay was chaos. Hostages in beds, some injured, some sick, all terrified. Velrathi guards spinning toward them, weapons rising. Suppressing fire, Soman ordered. Her team spread out, taking cover. Returning fire with the kind of coordinated aggression that made opponents hesitate. In that hesitation, in that moment of doubt, humans struck. Sergeant Minho Bayek threw a flashbang. The explosion disoriented the guards. Private Seokyoung was already moving, crossing the distance with speed that seemed impossible in full combat gear. His training kicked in, muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice. Disarm, disable, secure. 3 guards down in as many seconds. Medical bay secure, Soman reported. We have approximately 80 hostages here. Requesting immediate evac, negative, Jiwon replied. We can't get you out yet. Hold position. Protect those people. Mirai is monitoring your situation. She'll guide you if anyone needs immediate medical attention. Understood. We're not going anywhere. On the bridge, Dr. Mirai Choi was indeed monitoring the situation. She had her medical sensors focused on the bay, reading vital signs, assessing injuries through the walls. Soman, you have 3 hostages in critical condition, she said calmly. Red tags on your display. They need attention now or they won't survive evac. Medic Hanasong was already moving. I see them, Doctor. On it, Jiwon felt a surge of pride watching her crew work. This was what humans did best. Not just fighting, but protecting. Not just destroying, but saving. Every person on her ship understood their role. Trusted each other implicitly, moved with purpose. Captain. Doyon interrupted her thoughts. The fortress is launching all remaining fighters. And they're bringing their main weapons online. The big ones, how big? Big enough to crack a planet. They're targeting us. Jiwon studied the tactical display. The Velrathi commander had finally realized he wasn't dealing with a typical council ship. He was going to use overwhelming force, damn the collateral damage. Junho, how close can you get us to the fortress surface? Danger close, why? Because they won't fire their main weapons if we're pressed against their hull. They'll destroy themselves. That's insane. That's the point. Do it. The Horizon's Promise accelerated toward the fortress, closing the distance until they were almost touching the rocky surface. Weapon fire from the smaller platform still reached out, but Taewon had angled their shields to maximum effect. They're holding fire on the main weapons, Doyon confirmed. But Captain, we can't stay here forever. Eventually they'll find a way to target us. We don't need forever. We just need time. Aaron, send a message to the Council fleet. Tell them we've secured 80 hostages and we're working on the rest. Tell them we could use some help. Captain, Ambassador Hyun spoke up. The Council won't come back. They've already voted to declare this mission a loss. Then tell them we're making history. The Velrathi stronghold looked like a wound in space. The hollowed asteroid fortress sat in the middle of a debris field, its surface covered in weapons ports and sensor arrays. Jiwon studied it through the viewport of the Horizon's Promise, counting at least 30 visible defensive positions. The Council fleet has arrived, Doyun reported from his tactical station. 12 ships. They're forming up in standard siege formation. Jiwon watched the massive Council vessels move into position. They were beautiful in their own way, sleek and elegant, designed more for presence than combat. Each ship was 3 times the size of her own vessel, with gleaming hulls and broad sensor arrays. "They're hailing the fortress," Ensign Aaron Joe announced from communications. "Standard demand for surrender, offering safe passage and fair trial in exchange for the hostages." "Any response?" Ambassador Hyun asked. He had positioned himself at a small observation station on the bridge, keeping out of the way but watching everything. "Nothing yet," Aaron replied. "Wait, incoming transmission from the Velrathi." A face appeared on the main screen. The Velrathi commander was humanoid enough to be unsettling, with gray skin, 6 fingers on each hand, and eyes that sat too far apart. His mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Council dogs," he said in heavily accented Common. "You bring your fleet to intimidate us? We are not impressed. You sit, you wait, you negotiate. This is all you know how to do." High Observer Karenth's voice came through on the fleet channel. "Release the hostages and you will be treated fairly under council law. Resist and we will wait until you have no choice but to surrender." The Velrathi commander laughed. "Wait, yes you will wait. We have supplies for 2 years. The hostages have supplies for perhaps 3 months. Let us see who grows impatient first." The transmission ended. Jiwon felt her hands tighten on her chair. 3 months. They were using the hostages as shields, counting on the Council's unwillingness to risk civilian lives. "Captain," Corporal Soman Kang spoke from the Marine Ready Room through the intercom. "My team is prepped and ready if you need us." "Stand by, Corporal," Jiwon replied. She switched to a private channel with the Council flagship. "High Observer, this is Captain Kim. Request permission to perform a reconnaissance scan of the fortress." There was a long pause. "Negative, Captain. We do not want to provoke them. All ships will maintain position and await further negotiation." Jiwon switched off the channel and looked at Doyun. He raised an eyebrow. "Did you want to actually follow that order?" he asked quietly. "Taewon," Jiwon called to engineering. "How quietly can you run a deep scan?" "Quietly enough that they won't notice until it's too late," the chief engineer replied. "But the Council will definitely notice. Do it. Passive sensors only. I want to know what we're dealing with." The minutes ticked by slowly. Jiwon watched the Council ships hold their position, not moving, not acting, just sitting in space like monuments to bureaucracy. She understood their philosophy. Peace through patience, violence as a last resort, but sometimes the last resort came too late. "Captain," Taewon's voice cut through her thoughts. "You need to see this." He transferred his readings to her command display. Jiwon felt her blood run cold. "Those aren't defensive platforms," she said slowly. "No, Captain. Those are weapons. Heavy weapons, military grade. Enough firepower to tear through the Council fleet in minutes." Doyun leaned over her shoulder, studying the readings. "It's an ambush. They wanted the Council to come here." Jiwon switched back to the Council flagship. "High Observer Karenth, this is Captain Kim. You need to see what we've found. Transmitting sensor data now." Another pause, longer this time. When Karenth responded, his voice carried an edge she hadn't heard before. "This data cannot be correct. The Velrathi have never possessed weapons of this magnitude." "The data is correct," Jiwon insisted. "High Observer, you need to order the fleet to scatter now." "We do not scatter. We do not retreat. This would show weakness." "This isn't about weakness, it's about survival. Those platforms can target your entire fleet simultaneously. If they fire..." The world exploded into light and sound. Warning alarms shrieked across the bridge as the hidden weapons platforms activated. Energy beams lanced out from the asteroid field, striking 3 Council ships before anyone could react. The vessel's shields flared and died. Hull breaches blossomed like flowers, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. "Evasive maneuvers," Jiwon shouted. Yunyo threw the Horizon's Promise into a hard spin, dodging a beam that would have cut them in half. The human ship moved with an agility the larger Council vessels couldn't match. "The fleet is breaking formation," Doyun reported. His voice was steady despite the chaos. "No, wait. They're retreating." Jiwon couldn't believe what she was seeing. The council ships were turning away, abandoning their position, leaving the hostages behind. "Carinth, what are you doing?" she demanded. "We cannot fight this, Captain Kim. We must withdraw and reassess. Standard protocol when faced with overwhelming force. There are 3,000 people in that fortress, and they are acceptable losses compared to losing the fleet. This is difficult, Captain, but it is the correct decision. Acceptable losses." The words hit Jiwon like a physical blow. "Ambassador," she said, turning to Hyun, "I need authority to act." Hyun looked at her for a long moment. She could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing everything they had worked for against what was right. Finally, he nodded. "Do what you have to do, Captain." Jiwon switched to fleet-wide communications. "High Observer, the Horizon's promise is not retreating. Captain Kim, you will follow fleet protocol or face charges of insubordination. Log it. We're going in." She closed the channel before he could respond. "Aaron, transmit a message to Earth. Tell them what's happening here. Make sure someone knows." "Aye, Captain." "Doyen, bring weapons online. Taewon, divert all non-essential power to shields and engines. Trunyo, plot me a course through that debris field. Tight and fast. Somin, get your Marines ready for boarding action." The crew moved without hesitation. No debates. No committees. Just action. "Captain," Murray said from her medical station, "this is suicide. You know that, right? One ship against an entire fortress." "One human ship," Jiwon corrected. "There's a difference." She pulled up the tactical display studying the fortress defenses. The Velrathi had made a mistake. They had designed their trap for slow, predictable council ships. They had never fought humans before. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship-wide intercom. "The council is retreating. We are not. I won't lie to you. This is going to be dangerous. But there are 3,000 people in that fortress who will die if we don't act. I need everyone at their best. I need you to remember what we are, what we've always been. We are humans. We don't abandon our pack." She paused, looking around her bridge. Young faces, seasoned faces, all of them watching her with trust she hoped she deserved. "We are hunters," she continued, "and it's time we showed the galaxy what that means. All stations report ready, one by one." Her department heads confirmed their status. Weapons ready, shields at maximum, Marines standing by, medical bay prepared for casualties. "Course plotted, Captain. It's going to be a rough ride." Jiwon gripped her chair and felt something ancient and primal rise in her chest. This was what humanity had spent millions of years becoming. Not just killers, but protectors. Predators with a purpose. Take us in, Junho, full speed. And someone get me a target priority list. Let's show these pirates what happens when they cage the wrong prey. The Horizon's promise accelerated toward the fortress. Alone. Outnumbered. Outgunned. Behind them, the council fleet continued its retreat, their sensors watching in horror and fascination. On the bridge of the council flagship, Carinth watched the human vessel charge forward. "They're insane," one of his officers whispered. "No," Carinth replied slowly. "I think we're about to learn what we invited into our council." The Velrathi commander appeared on screen again, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion as he watched the single human ship come straight at him. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Why don't they retreat like the others?" His tactical officer studied his displays. "Commander, they're not slowing down. They're accelerating. They're going to ram us. Target them. Target them now." Energy beams lanced out from the fortress platforms, but the human ship twisted and rolled, moving like nothing the Velrathi had ever encountered. It was too small, too fast, too unpredictable, and it wasn't stopping. In her command chair, Jiwon smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator that had finally spotted its prey. "Let's hunt," she said. The conference room aboard the council station felt too large for Captain Jiwon Kim. Everything in the Galactic Council was built large, designed for species that towered over humans. The ceiling stretched 30 feet above her head, and the chairs required a small step to climb into. Jiwon sat at the massive table next to Ambassador Hyun Park, watching 7 different alien species debate in their translated voices. "The situation is dire," said Counselor Velness, his feathered crest rising and falling with agitation. The avian creature stood nearly 8 feet tall, his blue and silver plumage shimmering under the station lights. 3,000 civilians, men, women, children from 5 different worlds, all held hostage by the Velrathi pirates. Jiwon leaned forward slightly. She had been part of the Galactic Council for 15 years now, serving mostly in diplomatic roles and research missions. Humanity was still the newest member, still trying to prove themselves to species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. What do they want? Ambassador Hyun asked. His voice was calm, measured. He had been dealing with the Council longer than anyone else from Earth. Resources, technology, safe passage through Council space. High Observer Caranth spoke next, his scaled face impossible to read. The reptilian commander controlled all Council military forces. Standard pirate demands. We have begun standard protocol, which is... Ji-won couldn't help herself. She knew the answer would frustrate her. We surround their position. We demand surrender. We wait 72 hours. If they refuse, we begin a siege that will last until they run out of supplies. Caranth's tongue flicked out briefly. It takes time, but it works, always. Always. Ji-won repeated. How long does it usually take? 6 months. Sometimes a year. Velnus ruffled his feathers. But we lose very few lives this way. Patience is the foundation of peace. Ji-won felt something cold settle in her stomach. 6 months, a year. 3,000 hostages locked in whatever hellhole the pirates called home, waiting while the Council slowly starved their captors out. The hostages, Dr. Mireille Choi spoke up from beside Ji-won. The xenobiologist had been quiet until now. What happens to them during the siege? The Council members looked at each other. None of them spoke. I see, Mireille said softly. Ambassador Hyun cleared his throat. With respect, counselors, humanity would like to offer assistance with this mission. We have experience with this type of situation. Experience with pirates? Velnus tilted his head. A gesture that Ji-won had learned meant curiosity among his people. Experience with hostage situations, Hyun clarified. Our military has specialized training for exactly this scenario. Caranth's scaled brow ridge lifted. You mean violence? Direct confrontation. We have studied your species, Ambassador. Your evolutionary history. You are predators! The word hung in the air like an accusation. Ji-won watched Hyun's jaw tighten slightly. It was always like this. Humanity's past, their biology, their history of warfare. It followed them everywhere in Council space. Every species here had evolved from prey animals. Herbivores, filter feeders, creatures that ran from danger rather than confronting it. They looked at humans with their forward-facing eyes, their omnivorous teeth, their compact muscular builds, and they saw monsters barely kept in check. We are also diplomats, Hyun said carefully. We are scientists, artists, philosophers. But yes, our ancestors were hunters, and that history gave us certain skills that might be useful here. Skills like killing, another council member muttered. Ji-won didn't catch which one. Skills like moving quickly, Hyun countered. Skills like making hard decisions under pressure. Skills like refusing to abandon people in danger. Velnus raised a wing for silence. The Council appreciates humanity's offer, truly. But we must consider the political implications. If we allow Earth's military to engage in direct combat, other species may see it as an escalation. A return to the old ways. The old ways where people didn't die waiting for bureaucracy? Ji-won said it before she could stop herself. Ambassador Hyun shot her a warning glance, but she met his eyes steadily. They both knew what 6 months meant for those hostages. The pirates wouldn't feed them well, wouldn't treat them gently. Some would die. Many would be traumatized forever. Captain Kim raises a valid concern, Caranth said, surprising everyone. The Velrathi are not known for mercy. However, our methods have kept galactic peace for 3,000 years. We cannot simply abandon our principles because one species offers a faster solution. Even if that solution saves lives? Mireille asked. Especially then, Velnus replied. Violence begets violence. This is the foundation of Council philosophy. Ji-won looked at Lieutenant Do-Yun Lee, her tactical officer who had remained silent throughout the meeting. He met her gaze and gave the slightest shake of his head. Not here, not now. Perhaps a compromise, Hyun suggested. Humanity will join the Council fleet as observers. We will follow your protocols, your timeline. But if the situation changes, if the hostages are in immediate danger, you allow us to act. The Council members whispered among themselves in their various languages. Ji-won couldn't understand the words, but she recognized the tone. Suspicion. Fear. These peaceful species had built their entire civilization on avoiding conflict. And here were humans asking for permission to do what they feared most. Agreed, Velnus finally said. But understand, Captain Kim, Ambassador Park, we will be watching very closely. Humanity's membership in this council is still probationary. Any excessive violence, any deviation from approved methods, and Earth's position here will be reviewed. We understand, Hyun said. The meeting ended shortly after. As they walked back through the station's corridors, Doyun fell into step beside Ji-won. They're going to let those people suffer, he said quietly. I know. We're not going to just watch that happen, are we? Ji-won glanced at him. Doyun had been with her for 8 years. He knew her well enough to already guess her answer. We'll follow their protocols, she said carefully, until we can't anymore. Back aboard the Horizon's Promise, Ji-won's diplomatic vessel, Chief Engineer Taewon Yoon was waiting. Captain, I've been monitoring the situation. The Velrothi stronghold is in the Outer Veil region. Heavy asteroid field. Perfect for hiding weapons platforms. You think it's a trap, Ji-won said. I think pirates don't usually grab 3,000 hostages and sit around waiting for the council to show up. Not unless they want the council to show up. Ji-won sat in her command chair and pulled up the tactical display. The fortress location blinked red on her screen. Around it, nothing but rocks and darkness. How long until we reach the coordinates? She asked. 16 hours at current speed. Her pilot, Warrant Officer Jun Ho Shin, replied. Then we use that time to prepare. Taewon, I want every weapon system checked and ready. Doyun, pull up everything we have on Velrothi tactics. Mirai, prepare medical bay for potential mass casualties. Captain, Hyun said from behind her. She hadn't heard him enter the bridge. We agreed to follow council protocol. And we will, Ji-won assured him. Right up until the moment that protocol gets people killed. Hyun studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Just remember, the entire galaxy is watching us. They already think we're dangerous. Let's not prove them right. We are dangerous, Ji-won said quietly. That's the whole point. Sometimes you need dangerous people to stand between monsters and innocence. She turned back to her display, watching the red dot that marked 3,000 lives hanging in the balance. 16 hours. She hoped it would be enough time. Behind her, she could feel her crew moving with purpose. They all knew what was coming. They had all felt the frustration of council protocols before, the endless debates and careful procedures. Humans had learned patience in their years among the stars, but they had never lost the instinct that made them successful on Earth. When the pack was threatened, you didn't wait. You acted. The Horizon's Promise accelerated toward the Outer Veil, and somewhere ahead, the Velrothi pirates prepared their trap, having no idea what kind of prey they had tried to catch.